Hey up, Norlin here. It wouldn't be fair to call Chernobylite a Stalker clone. It's like calling all fantasy games, or all open world games, Skyrim. Or it's like calling all games that are similar to Skyrim. Oh, that game there, it's just like Skyrim, but with guns. Anyway, in fact, it definitely shares more with games like Fallout 4 and the old Fear games. So what is Chernobylite? Chernobylite is a horror-light, survival-light, RPG-light, first-person shooter resource management game. The player plays as a physicist called Igor, who was formerly employed at the Chernobyl nuclear plant.
50,000 people used to live here.
He's still suffering the loss of his fiancée in the Chernobyl disaster 30 years ago, and returns to the disaster zone to look for their partner, or clues to her disappearance, but you are dragged into a huge conspiracy during the game. The gameplay revolves around exploring the exclusion zone, gathering supplies and tools, while encountering various stalkers to recruit to your team, in a classic let's get the gang back together for one last heist. The player is also forced to make decisions which affect the non-linear storyline, and again with the title tropes of decisions have consequences. But in this game, they actually hold true. They change a lot of the game's outcomes and what you'll encounter during future levels, or, to be more accurate, on what future days. There is a crafting system which allows the player to craft their own equipment and weapons, as well as a home base which the player can kit out with a large array of workstations and other items to boost your team's morale and give you more storage and things like that. The gameplay loop. After the initial opening levels, the game opens up into its main layout. You, Igor, have a home base, which is a fairly large warehouse overlooking the power station and the surrounding areas. From here, you'll check your map to see your current missions and can send your companions out on missions too to gather resources. When on the ground, you encounter lots of threats, including NAR troops, Chernobylite monsters, as well as lots of environmental hazards such as radiation, toxic clouds that require the use of gas masks to venture through. After you complete your objectives, you can choose to stay and gather more resources in the given area, but be warned, the longer you dally, the increased chances that more and more monsters will spawn, and a character called the Black Stalker. These can be offset by building equipment on the ground, but I'll get to this later. So, to return to your base, you whip out your portal gun, and then you repeat this gameplay loop throughout the game. The game is set up in days, so after each successful extraction, back to your home base, you'll have to assign food resources, or rations to all your team members, to keep their health and mental well-being topped up. You can divide these individually between each member, or you can set it so all your companions eat the exact same amount that you do. While back at your home base, you'll want to construct workbenches so you can mod your weapons, build more items like lockpicks or medkits. You'll also have to take into account power management for things like lights and the workbenches. Also remember to build beds and air purifiers to increase your team's morale. You'll be prompted if you need to do any of this and what negative effects it'll have on your team if you don't. And then you simply go to bed, and then it's the next day. Normally you'll get a message on the radio with some story quests, or team member will give you a quest. And then progressively through the game, as each day goes by, it will evolve, getting harder and harder. There'll be more enemy patrols, more radiation, or more monsters. But all of this will change depending on a lot of factors, including your choices in the game and what you build in the field. And speaking of building in the field, on the grounds you can build a lot of simple crafting stations to make medkits and ammo, as well as traps like mines. You can also build things that reduce or even reverse the effects of the toxic gas in some areas, slow the spread of radiation, so the next time you're back at that location it will be a little easier for you. The game features 3 base weapons which can be modded with different sights and barrels to convert them to submachine guns or snipers. Ammo is fairly common, particularly with the assault rifle which you'll be getting from fallen NAR troops. I found aiming in the game to be a bit jittery and hard to aim, especially with the revolver, as you'll be wanting to go for them one-shot headshots. The shotgun, I'd say, is the easiest to use, as one upper torso shot usually does the job. The game also utilises a stealth mechanic. You can sneak beside people or distract them with firecrackers which you can build. Also, depending on what armour you'll be wearing, depends on the amount of noise you'll be making, which may alert more enemies. You also have to take into account the player's stress levels, as it can take a toll on the player for brutally taking down people or assassinating them from the shadows. This can be healed by lots of items in the game. Also, there will be certain skill perks which you can unlock which will help reduce this effect or even remove it completely. The player will gain XP after completing missions, collecting items or killing enemies. These build up to give you a skill point, and these can be redeemed at your companions for perks. And after you select the perk you want from a companion, it will then take you to a mini mission where you need to do some training. This is a great way to deal with levels ups, as we don't see this in many games. There's lots of perks like this in the game, such as more damage with certain weapons, or take no mental damage from stealth takedowns.
I'm waiting. Please. Hurry.
Right, moving on to graphics and sound. This is a strange one. The graphics are pretty standard for modern consoles, but there can be moments where the graphics in some locations look brilliant with the correct lighting and effects. But then you'll go inside a building and the light just looks off, like there's light bleed with other annoying effects, and sometimes there's almost as there's a lack of shadows, particularly inside. Interestingly, the game also uses a lot of photogrammetry, which is taking real-world items and locations and taking hundreds of pictures to create the polygon mesh and attach the real texture to that object. This gives the object brilliant lifelike visuals, at least from a certain distance. Although this technique is used in lots of games now for lots of assets, I've never really seen it in a game where it's used for like a whole room. You can generally tell by the way certain objects in the room are blended into the floors or walls. This is quite new technology, so it's nice to see it getting used a lot more. The trick lies with retopologizing the objects smoothly and efficiently to make them better suited for a video game. Next up is sound. So all the sound in the game is well done, with passive amounts of ambient effect being well suited for the gameplay, with murmurs of the various monsters and lots of NPC chatter. All fully voiced in Russian as well as in English. There was a bug for me where the dialogue would randomly switch from English and to Russian or vice versa every time I'd load the game back up. Hopefully nothing a simple patch won't fix. And there we have it. This brings us to the end of my Chernobylite no nonsense review. Please subscribe if you found this interesting and would like to see more. Anyway, see ya.
Personally, I don't give a Todd's fought what you do. My job here is done.